Solving radical equation notes. We are going to solve each equation for x, and the new wrinkle this time is that the x will have a square root around it, or there'll be the square root around an equation, like on this third example. So solving these is pretty easy. All we have to do is do the opposite of taking the square root, which is squaring something, okay? So like 4 squared is 16. The opposite of squaring is taking the square root, which gets you back to 4. So squaring and square roots are opposites. So on this one, all we will do is square both sides. That gets rid of the square root sign. And 9 squared is 9 times 9, which is 81. If I have the square root of x equals -7, I still do the same thing. Square both sides. And be careful if you type this in your calculator, because we're actually squaring the negative sign and the 7 as well. So in your calculator, you'd actually type in -7 in parentheses and square it. So the answer here is 49. If you just type -7 and square it in your calculator is going to give you -49 because it thinks only the 7 is getting squared and not the negative sign. So to get around that, if you're going to use your calculator, you should always put the -7 in parentheses. Or just realize that anytime we square a number, whether it's positive or negative, we're always going to get a positive answer. Here, there's more than just x inside the square root, and that's okay. We're still going to square both sides first. It's going to give me 3x equals 9 squared is 81. And then we're going to divide both sides by the 3. 81 divided by 3 is 27. Here I have -4x inside the square root. I'll square both sides. I get -4x on this side. I get 36 on this side. Divide both sides by -4. And I get -9. Sometimes there might be more of an equation underneath the square root sign. Again, we're just going to square both sides first, because that gets rid of the square root. So I get 2x plus 6 equals, and 4 squared, of course, is 16. And now I'm going to subtract 6 from both sides. We're just solving like we learned a long time ago. I get 2x is 10, then I divide by 2, I get x is 5. So the key here so far is that we're going to square both sides of the equation to get rid of the square root symbol. Now, if there's more outside of the square root symbol, we need to get rid of that first before we can square both sides. So this is 3 times the square root of x, so I'm going to divide both sides by 3 first, which gets me the square root of x equals 10. And once I have just the square root left on this side of the equation, now I can square both sides. I get x is 100. So whatever's outside of the square root symbol, we need to get rid of that information first. So here, I have square root of x plus 9 times 4 equals 4. So first I'm going to divide both sides by 4 to get rid of this 4. So I have the square root of x plus 9 equals, and 4 divided by 4 is 1. Now I can square both sides to get rid of the square root. And of course 1 squared is 1. And then I would subtract 9 from both sides. I get x is -8. And here I actually have the square root of x being multiplied by 2 and adding 4 to it. So I'm going to solve this using some of our old rules. First thing we get rid of is the plus 4 by subtracting 4 from both sides. So I get 2 square root of x equals 16. Now I can get rid of the multiplying by 2 by dividing by 2. That cancels. I get the square root of x is 8. And then I'm going to square both sides, get rid of that. 8 times 8 is 64. So the key step today is that to get rid of a square root symbol, you are going to square both sides of the equation.